Lighting. It's that one art technique that artists use to tell stories, add depth, and evoke emotion in their work. When I think of lighting executed skillfully, there are a couple of artists that come to mind. May Yumiami, Sam Does Art, Parallel, and so many countless others. Hi, I'm Blue, and I'm on a journey to go from intermediate to professional artist. Every month, I'll be doing extensive studies on art topics and making videos on what I was able to learn for the month. For the last 30 days, I've been doing in-depth lighting studies to try and figure out how to create lightings like my favorite artists. So let me show you what I was able to learn. I think the artist that inspired me to take this most seriously is GetSleep1200 on Instagram and on Twitter. I adore the way they show shapes with simple colors and interesting compositions. They use very few colors or desaturated colors, but the way they show shape and depth in story is through their lighting and shading being so realistic or complex. They have an excellent understanding on how lighting and shading works, and this brings their work to life without their art style having to be very detailed. There's a couple of study resources that I used for this video. To deepen my knowledge of lighting and shading, I read the book Light for Visual Artists by Richard Yacht. It's packed with insights and I can't recommend it enough. I first read it online and then ordered a copy for myself. I'll link it below if you don't have the resources to be able to buy the book, but please support the author if you can. There was a lot of references and notes and planning that I had to keep track of to be able to create all these studies and still keep the notes kind of legible. That's why I'm so happy to say that this video has been sponsored by Milanote. Milanote is a powerful software and app that is designed to help plan creative projects with notes, mood boards, timetables, and more. It's really easy to get started and not intimidating at all, which is what I really like about it. I've used Milanote in the past for projects, management, and organization. Over January, I used it to collect all my notes, my sources, my references, and basically everything that I studied so I can keep track of everything for this video. One of the key features that I use the most is their browser extension, which lets you save images directly onto a board's notes section, and then you can drag and drop it into your board. This is really good for organization, and it keeps the original link to where you found the reference. Milanote also allows you to keep notes, checklists, and make multiple boards in one board, which is what I use to neatly compile my study notes and references. If you don't like starting from scratch, Milanote has pre-made templates that you can just click and then use from there. There's so many, from mood boards to checklists to to-do lists. The boards are also shareable, so if you're a team trying to manage a project, everybody can have access and edit the board as they want, which is great for like team management and keeping things together. Just make sure that nobody deletes anything or that's gonna be a disaster. It's also available for mobile, so you can carry around and edit your notes wherever you are. And Milanote is completely free to use, which is great because we love free things. So if you have any projects or things you'd like to organize, whether you're a creative or your business, I highly recommend checking them out. I'll have them linked down below if you're interested. And a big thank you to Milanote for allowing me to make this video, and a big thank you to everyone for supporting me and making brand deals like this possible. Before we dive in, let me explain why I use a sphere for my study examples. A sphere is a simple shape that shows us how light behaves. It displays all the lighting that you need to understand how most things work. So like halftones, core shadows, foreshadows, highlights, the terminator, reflected lights, occlusion shadows, cast shadows, and the penumbra? I think that's how you say it. This makes it a perfect tool for learning how light reacts in different environments and on various materials in a simple way. But I'll get into how all this works later. Here's the bare basics I think it's important to be able to grasp before moving on to the whys and the hows. Let's talk about lighting sources. This is very simple. This is where the light comes from. The sun is our strongest natural light, delivering direct, intense rays that create sharp highlights and high contrast shadows. In simple terms, this means that the shadow is dark and the highlight is light. Here are two examples, one with high contrast and one with low contrast. But the sun isn't the only light source we have. The sky, so the big blue part, also plays an essential role in this. It's a soft, ambient light that can bounce off surfaces and fill in shadows, leading to a blue tint to areas that would otherwise be deep dark. This is referred to as bounce light. Bounce light helps reveal subtle gradients and details in the shadow. The skylight is also the reason why a lot of the shadows are blue outside, because of the blue rays bouncing from the sky onto the objects. Another important factor for the bare basics is the terminator. This is the darkest part of the shadow that sits between the highlight and the bounce light. This will be the defining line for contrast, so basically this separates the highlight and the shadow. The next is radiance. Radiance refers to the color an object reflects when illuminated. Different colors can absorb or reflect light. So for example, white surfaces reflect all near-coming light, while darker colors absorb and will not reflect light. The white sunlight reflecting onto this ball is so intense that it's reflecting the red color onto other objects, but it's not doing the same for the black ball, and that is because the black ball is absorbing the light instead of reflecting it. This can also be a sort of bounce light. Our brain tries to normalize the colors we see. So even if an object is inherently a certain color, the light conditions can alter our perception of it. For example, this sphere is white, right? But if we have a closer look, it's actually a blue tint. Our brains rationalize the color to appear normal for us, but if you pay closer attention, you'll see that they change depending on the environment. Now that the basics are over, let's get into the more nitty-gritty parts. The environment and setting play a huge role in how the light and shadows will behave. There's outdoor lighting and then indoor lighting. I'll go over outdoor lighting first. So mid-morning lighting. At mid-morning, sunlight is strong and direct. The sun doesn't have far to travel to reach us, so it's very strong. And due to this, there is strong contrast and sharp edges. This is because the sun is directly shining on the object. Because the sunlight is white and very strong in mid-morning, the intensity can wash out some colors and details, making shadows appear very dark and highlights appear almost white or the colors washed out. So early morning or late afternoon. As the sun lowers, its light softens into a warm golden hue. This is due to the atmosphere and some scientific stuff that I don't want to get into, but you can read the book if you want. The shadows take on a cooler blue tint due to the influence of the skylight and the sun no longer being as bright, instead creating a softer edge and lower contrast. Sunset and dusk. At sunset, the sun color shifts to a deep orange and reds, and its intensity decreases. Skylight then becomes the influential light source. The skylight will cast shadows that are less harsh and often a rich blue, purple, or pink. Basically, dusk is just very soft and there's not a lot of intense lighting or shading in this area. There's also a lot of pinks, purples, and oranges here. Open shade or overcast. In open shade, the only light is diffuse light. Diffuse light is light that has been interrupted. It's not directly from the light source, so there's something in front of it basically. So like mist can diffuse light, or the atmosphere being very thick can diffuse light, or shade can diffuse light. It's basically not direct and it's very soft. With the diffuse light from the shade or overcast, the shadows will be evenly distributed across the surface or wherever. Now let's talk about indoor lighting. So first off is fall off. Indoors, light falls off rapidly. Fall off is when the light gets dimmer or more spread out, the further it is away from the light source. This happens with indoor lights and not the sun, because the sun is huge and very strong, but indoor lights are weaker, so they diffuse as they go further. They're not that strong, they can't reach as far as the sun. And indoor lights are made to be diffused, so like lampshades are meant to scatter light across the room to be more soft and diffused, not like a flashlight that's meant to beam just a single ray of light somewhere. So fall off, I hope you understand what that means now, can also occur with windows, since it's not direct sunlight or skylight. It's kind of just catching what the sky or the sun. This means the light becomes softer and more blurry. The more windows a room has, the more evenly the light will spread, reducing harsh contrast and heavy shadows. Now that also depends if the sun is shining directly through the window or if it's not. Because if it's shining through the window directly, then yeah, there's gonna be a really sharp, high contrast shadow because of how bright the sun is. So if there's multiple light sources in a room, depending on how strong the light sources are, there's going to be a lot of diffuse light. So there's not going to be a lot of strong contrasting shadows. But if there's like one like light in a room, that's the only one that's there and it's not very strong, it's going to have lots of fall off. So darker area, strong contrast of the shadows, sharper edges, etc. So mixed lighting. When natural and artificial light mixed, such as during the evening when a warm indoor light meets the blue of like a twilight, this can result in the shadows and highlights being very dynamic, since there's like multiple light sources now and a lot more colors. This often leads to exciting contrast and different color temperatures that interact on the same surface. Light direction and its impact on shadows. This is really interesting and quite important, so I'll go over this quickly. So there's front lighting, which is where the light source is coming directly from the viewer. This will reveal fine details, but it can also flatten the object or the subject, and there's not a lot of shading with this one. It often washes out textures and makes the overall object appear two-dimensional. There's side lighting. Lighting from the side emphasizes textures and sculptures and form by casting strong highlight and deep contrasting shadows. This type of lighting helps to accentuate the contour, the shape, and creating more dynamic three-dimensional effect. There's backlighting. So when the light comes from behind, it creates a luminous rim, so like a rim light, or a halo effect around the subject. Backlighting often results in a silhouette for the object. Backlighting can separate the object from its background and can create really like interesting pictures, I guess. And then overhead or underside lighting. Overhead lighting is lighting from above, and then lighting from below, which is it catches a lot of features as well, but it's also not very pleasing to look at. These are just super simple to grasp, but important for the next couple parts that I'll go through. I feel we spoke about light very well. Now let's talk about shading and shadows and how that works. So we have form shadows, which is this part here. These are the subtle gradation of shadows on the curved surface of an object, where direct light cannot reach. They're influenced by indirect or reflected lights from surrounding surfaces, like the ground or the sky. Form shadows help reveal the three-dimensional shape of an object. Because they are softened by ambient light, they usually have gentle, gradual transition rather than sharp edges. Then there's cast shadows. This one's really simple to understand. Cast shadows occur when an object is blocked a light source and it's projecting a dark silhouette onto another surface. Basically, if you remember the Terminator, so with the light where the shadow basically starts and it's darkest, it's that directly onto a surface. Cast shadows are typically much darker and defined than the form shadows because they receive little to no secondary light. Cast shadows not only anchor an object in the environment, but also enhance the overall composition by creating visual contrast and depth. Probably one of the most important shadows to learn. And then we have this weird one, the penumbra. The penumbra is the soft edge on the cast shadows, so the one we just spoke about. This is the soft, fluffy edge that you see here. The reason why it's blurring is because there's multiple light sources catching onto this part of the cast shadow. But that's the very scientific way of thinking about it. How I like to think about it is the further the object's cast shadow is from the actual object, the blurrier the shadow will be. And then I think this is everybody's favorite kind of shading, is the ambient occlusion. I hope I'm saying that right. I think this is how we all first start shading. Ambient occlusion is the term for the subtle darkening that occurs in the crevices and the areas where surfaces meet. This is, for example, this dark area between the couch pillow and the cushion. Honestly, if you want to go and only use this, you can. It's a little bit boring, but it's also the simplest, most effective way to create depth. Base shadows is basically something that goes with the penumbra. It is where the object makes contact with the floor or the surface, and that is that shadow right there that is created from the object touching the surface. It is the darkest part as well, and it just makes sure that the object doesn't look like it's floating. Now I took this straight from the book, but I think this is really interesting and I have to add it here for you to understand lighting and shading just a little bit more. So here is a picture and the description says, shadows cast from a very distant light source such as the sun will be parallel to each other and remain at the same relative thickness from the shadow casting object. So basically they're all just pointed the same direction and there's only one light source. The second one is in contrast to the previous example, shadow cast from a nearby light source, such as an artificial light, will radiate from the source. Note how the width of the shadow themselves also increase as they radiate out from the light. This is because the light isn't as strong as the sun, and it's also a lot closer. And then the final one, which is like super interesting, and I've always wondered why this happens. With multiple nearby light sources, the shadow radiates out in multiple directions. Note the different amount of full light received by each individual shadow, depending on its position and relation to all different lights. So, as you can see, that there's 3 different light sources here, but there are 3 shadows basically by each of these pillars. This is actually really cool. Here's an example that I saw in real life of this actually happening indoors. This is my lovely friend's house, which had a great example of multiple light sources and then one object showing different cast shadows. And then finally, textures play a huge role in how shadows and lighting interact with objects and its surroundings, like reflections, diffuse lighting, hard shadows, soft shadows. But I cannot get into textures because that would be another 15 minutes onto this video. The book covers this in great detail. It's incredibly fascinating and I suggest read it if you're interested. But if you end up liking this video and would like me to continue with the book, I would be very happy. They go on to explain color theory for lighting and shading, composition with lighting and shading, and like shading humans and environments, and it's really, really cool. So if you're interested, just let me know. But here's how I studied everything that I just explained to you and how I put it into my work today. So the book really recommends doing observations of real life, observing how light interacts with everything around you. Instead of just assuming you know what's going on, try and figure it out. Almost like I did with my friend's home. Rather than just looking and being like, okay, 2 light sources, that makes sense, I tried to figure out exactly why that was happening. And I've been doing that a lot throughout like my day-to-day, and it's really interesting and it does help you understand and catch on the light better. That's just the observing part and the mental image part. Now we can get into the actual drawing. So I use these spheres to visualize shading and how light interacts on the curves. It's really fascinating because the sphere helps me break down the light and its key components. So like the highlight color, the shading color, the cast light, the form, all that stuff that I just mentioned. So you'll see many spheres throughout the rest of the video. So first thing that I went into with this is I drew spheres and the different direction lights. So from top, right, left, front, up, down. I kept it black and white so I can concentrate on the values and just really concentrate on getting the form to look correct. Once I was really comfortable with like this really basic circle, I moved on to see if I can study how objects take on everyday lighting and depending on their material and texture, how they interact. I know I didn't cover texture too well in this video, but I have like base understanding of it, so I will still show you and then maybe you can also just do the practices as well. And then in the next video I'll explain how textures interact with each other. But what I did basically is I took random images offline and then I turned them into spheres. I tried to look at the image and then try and do that exactly onto the sphere that I had. So for example that I'm using here is I took a teapot and I tried to find the highlight color, I tried to find the form color, and then I tried to find the bounce light. And then once I had these colors picked out, I put them onto the bowl and tried to capture what the teapot had. Now the teapot had 2 different colors, so it had the handle and it also had the main like teapot thing. So I put them next to each other, and because remember how I said there's radiance, so this is an orange teapot, so it's going to radiate the color because that color does not absorb, it reflects. So it would have reflected onto the brown or black sphere, it's really cool, and I really highly suggest trying this. It's lots of fun. Also, like, it radiated down to the surface level as well. You can see I try to do that there. I did this with like skin color. I tried to do that with, yeah. If you're interested, if you're like watching these and wondering like, can I like watch a slower version of this? I will have the like free slowed down versions on my Patreon. Like, it's free, it's just on there, you can just go look. Yeah, so I don't want to include everything here, or this video is gonna be like 7 hours long. So once I got more comfortable with like these kind of exercises, I decided I wanted to try the direction light, but on one of my characters' heads. So I used the same diagram for like the little balls, and then I tried to replicate that onto like my character's head. I used this 3D model that has a light source that you can spin around and basically just form it to sit in the direction that you like. I'll have it linked in the description, but I used that. Very helpful, very cool. My execution was not very good. I didn't do it properly, but that's for next time. And then for like getting used to how the environment interacts with lighting, the book suggests to do quick 5 to 10 minute studies on environments. So to observe and not make assumptions, like look and see if you can figure out what is happening in this picture and lay it out as quickly as possible. I did this over and over and over again, and at first it was like kind of difficult. I didn't understand what I was supposed to be trying to do, but after a while I clicked kind of that I'm supposed to look and then do. So like, for example, the forests, when I was drawing them, I was looking at like there is mist in the air, so the light will be diffused, so really soft. The light source is coming from behind, so back here, so like the trees will be a silhouette and really dark, but there's also like breakage in the like trees, so light will be coming through here and there. So like that's kind of what I was trying to like observe quickly, like over and over again throughout these. And after that, finally, I decided to merge these approaches together, so the environment studies and the directional studies. And I did what this artist called Pigeon666 does. I love their work, they're so cool. What they do is they draw headshots in various lighting environments and different lighting directions, and that's how they practice like shading and stuff. I was obviously not able to do it as perfectly as them. I think that's going to take a lot more practice and understanding, but it was really interesting to like approach it like this. I had to do a lot of thinking. I did this a couple times for like 5 or 6 times, and then I ran out and I had to start producing the video, so there's no more studies after this. There's quite a few actually, like more, so you can go look at them if you want. They're over here. Yeah. So that has been the 30 days of studying lighting. If you're interested to know if it helped, yes it did. This was a piece that I did at the start of January, and this is a piece that I did recently, and even going into this piece, I thought about so much more than what I usually would, and it was so interesting and like a lot more fun actually. So I definitely highly recommend trying it, or at least getting some knowledge. And then yeah, the book covers so much more than what I did. Like I said before, a very cool book. I recommend it a lot. I'm planning to read a couple more books about lighting, but for now I think the environment studies really showed me that I have to kind of get into painting textures, because like, I don't know how to approach textures at all. So my next video will probably be about painting. Yeah, so hopefully that's good. But if you have any other topics you'd like me to like touch on, or if you want me to carry on with the book, just let me know. Or if you have any questions. Yeah, so this is a really long video. Way longer than what I usually do, but I hope you like it. And yeah, okay, bye.